Well, we'll start the recording, you know. I mean, we can always edit, so. But there's lots more people coming. This is awesome.
Great. The more, the better.
We had a little difficulty getting, on, so it might be taking people a while to switch. So I would give people a little time. Thanks.
Oscar's here.
Yes.
Justice.
Okay, we'll get started in a few minutes. People are still coming in at a high rate, so bear with us a couple minutes.
Mark, join us. You're allowed to eat. Just don't.
Hi, everybody. This is Pat.
Hi, Pat. We can't see your
Hi.
picture.
That's okay. I decided with a cold, it's not a pretty sight. So,
Oh,
so you'll just have to take a snowman.
that's okay. You're here. That's the
That's it. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, we're still getting people.
That's great. Does anybody have a count of how many people are here now?
Well, there's 38 participants.
38.
Good. That's great.
Hi, Nancy. Hi, Nathalie.
Hi, nice to be here. I'll be right back.
Don, once it starts, are you gonna mute everybody?
Sure, I can start doing that.
Just, we could just ask people to mute
Just self-mute because
themselves.
the board members need to be unmuted.
Oh, right. Well, I would say 7:04.
Oh, there's Bardil.
Good.
And
Lonnie.
Arnie
Yay.
and Alex.
You all have a few of us from Martinez as well. We are very grateful to you all. And so, hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
You inspired us. And so we're here joining you tonight.
Well, that's good.
Okay, what if we start? We okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So good evening. Welcome, everybody. My name is David Lindsay. I'm one of BCAMP's 5 board members, and BCAMP, I'll just say it once because it's a long name, is Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program. And so this evening, we've organized this panel discussion about community air monitoring and the potential health impacts of pollutants in the air we breathe. We'll get to the panel in a minute, but first a couple of words about BCAMP. Last year, our educational nonprofit launched the first independently owned, operated, and maintained state-of-the-art community-based air monitoring station in Benicia, and it's likely the first one of that type in the nation. The equipment was purchased through a settlement agreement negotiated in 2008 with the Valero refinery by the Good Neighbor Committee of Benicia. And I should mention that Argo Scientific is our contractor, and that we have two of their members are on today's panel discussion. We have a total of 5 board members. Let me introduce them. Marilyn Bardet is a longtime community activist and artist. Kathy Carriage, maybe you guys can just raise your hand when Kathy Carriage is a retired lawyer and teacher. Nancy Lund is a retired teacher and currently a community organizer. Bart Sullivan is a retired engineer and currently working as a patent attorney. And I am David Lindsay. I'm a retired chemical engineer, and I have had experience in refineries. So we have three panelists here this evening, and also a university student who's studying BCAMP's monitoring data, and he'll make a short presentation. And we'll be asking them questions. So as we go through the presentations today, if you have a question, please type it into the chat. Kathy's going to be monitoring that chat. And then at the end of our regular, we have a few questions to get people started, get the panel going, and then we'll have time at the end of the program for your questions. So tonight, our panelists each of them is an expert in their respective fields. We'll discuss air quality as related to human health risk and the purposes and usefulness of monitoring the air we breathe. So now I hand this over to Kathy.
Okay, so I'm gonna to put everyone in the mood, we're just gonna think a little bit about air pollution and what we see around us. So if you want to put your experience of air pollution in the chat, we can get a little audience participation, but I can tell you my most profound experience with air pollution was when we had the orange sky and the red sky and the orange all around us, and just the bizarre eerie light that lasted all day, which was caused by a particulate matter, I think, settling upon fog. So if anybody wants to put that in, some of the other things we often experience are flares, refinery flares. We've had a lot of experience with fire smoke at this time. Smells that we see. Sometimes we see a rotten egg smell or smell a rotten egg smell. And sometimes those smells go away, even though the chemical pollutant has not gone away, which is very scary because we don't even know it's there anymore, even though it is. And in the Bay Area, we have a lot of, in Benicia, we have a lot of sources. We have, of course, we have refineries up and down the straits. We have one here, two across the strait from us. We live at the intersection of two freeways. Oh yeah, Janet Johnson put on the Chevron exposure, the Chevron fire. We have train tracks going by our town. We have a port with ships loading and unloading. We have fires. And in our homes, we have natural gas, which is really methane. Elisa from Martinez put down, they had heavy metal contamination over Thanksgiving. And that was a huge air pollution, something that you could see, but maybe not smell. And we're going to be talking tonight about the health impacts associated with breathing today's urban air, which sometimes we call toxic soup, because we're not just exposed to one chemical at a time. We are exposed often to multiple chemicals all at once. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to David, who's going to introduce our panelists.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So our first panelist is Dr. Mirjana Moini. She's an oncologist, and she's the board member and co-chair of the Environmental Health Committee of the San Francisco Bay Physicians for Social Responsibility. Welcome, Dr. Moini. Secondly, we have Eric Stevenson. He's with Argos Scientific, and he was formerly the Director of Meteorology and Measurement at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and he retired after 30 years for BACMED. And like I mentioned, he's now on the staff of Argos and is the air monitoring manager. Or yeah, I'm sorry, he's working for Argos. And then next we have Don Gamilis. He's a PhD, founder and president of Argos Scientific. And then, like I mentioned, today we're lucky to have Liam Kane with us. He's an undergraduate student at Drexel University, and he's majoring in global sustainability analytics, and is a member of the Fairtech Collective Research,
Wasn't it? That was depressing.
working under the direction of Dr. Gwen Ottinger, who is an associate professor in Drexel's College for Science, Technology, and Society. Liam has been developing methods of
Sorry to put you through
analyzing
this. This is gonna be-
continuous air
Mickey as
monitoring
well. It's fine.
that speak directly to community concerns. So we'll have a presentation from Liam. So let's start with some questions. The first question we have for Dr. Moyni is, why do you think air monitoring is important?
I think the same way we are all very careful in choosing what we eat. We wouldn't eat something that we knowingly, somebody told us it was poisonous. We shouldn't breathe in air that's harmful to our health. So it's important to monitor the air to know what's in it, even though sometimes it's very complicated, very difficult to kind of be able to protect ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Second question I have is for Eric Stevenson, drawing on your regulatory background. Can data from BCAMP assist regulators doing their job?
Yes. I think the important thing to recognize here is the importance of providing context for that data for everyone. So having a transparent way of providing that data to everybody, and including things like quality assurance and quality control, so that everybody who looks at the data understands the errors associated with those data and how to best use those data. So one of the great things about the station at Benicia is that it uses some of the same instrumentation that is used in the EPA's regulatory network. We have developed a quality assurance project plan that outlines how the data are treated so that everybody has an idea of what measures are taken to ensure that the data are of high enough quality to make decisions based on that data. So yeah, the air monitoring from the regulatory standpoint provides additional information to the regulators, who can then better determine what actions to take for those local communities that have that data, and provide that better understanding of what that data quality is.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Eric. Don, the next question is for you. Can community monitoring like BCAMP's station assist the public, and how and why does it assist the public?
Well, David, I think the primary thing that it does is it helps the communities when presented correctly. And I think BCAMP is a perfect example of how to do this. Really present a good picture for the community of what the air quality is that they're currently, breathing and exposed to. And the beauty of the BCAMP system and how the website was designed, it was all based on community people putting together what's the best way to present this data that makes it in a way people can understand the information. That's critical. So not only do we have additional information and with the highest level of quality that we can get, because we are following regulatory guidelines, both in the type of equipment that's being used as well as how it's being operated, but also how the information is presented to the public is really meant to make it to where we want to maximize the usefulness to the community itself.
Right. Okay, good. So the next question I have is for Dr. Moyni. And question is more specifically, so what are the sources of the unhealthy compounds in our air now? And what are the health problems associated with them? And I know you have some slides you want to share, so that maybe this is a good time to do that.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that right now. So, the sources of air pollution, very often it has to do with extraction, processing, and combustion of fossil fuels. And also burning of, wood, for example, in our fireplaces. I'm just going to put up the slides because I want to just share a little too much in too little time. So, so let me see if I can make this work here. I'm going to just share my screen. Do you guys see that?
Not
I don't
yet.
see the screen. Huh. Let's see. Let me go back. Share screen. Oh, I am so sorry. I'm on to the one that says MD next to it. Could you make that a co-host? Sorry about that.
Certainly.
I just
Don,
have
did you hear that?
ancient computers and this one is really slow, so I don't want to share the, it says Marjan Amoini MD next to it.
Yeah, let me,
That's
let
my
me,
laptop. You
let
don't see
me,
my face. Sorry about that.
let me do that. Hold on.
That's the problem when you don't update your computer frequently. I do that for climate concerns. But this is like a fossil computer. Found me?
Yeah, I'm still, no, I don't want to do
Why
that.
don't I use this one? And if it's a slow, no, let me just open it.
Ah, here, I
Other
think,
one.
wait a minute,
Found it?
there's just so many people.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can try with this one. It just may be slow.
well, now, let me, I've got you. Oh, well, we just gotta find.
Don, while we wait for her to come up, I have
Sorry
a
about that.
question for you about whether monitoring is useful in pinpointing emission sources.
Yeah, just a minute, and I'm gonna actually, while we do that, I'm gonna, the person in the conference room with me tonight is actually Mark Baird. He's my, one of our managing directors over in the Cape Town, South Africa branch. Mark, why don't you answer that question? Can you use the data from these systems to pinpoint sources?
Yeah, definitely for the Benicia station, because you're measuring that. Oh, can you guys hear me? Am I speaking too quietly?
Well, go ahead.
For the Benicia station, you can, because you're measuring a number of different pollutants as well as wind speed, wind direction, and map data. So when you get a high concentration of a gas, it's very easy to look at the wind direction and see where that gas is coming from. And also because of the different pollutants that you're measuring, it's easy to take sort of ratios of different pollutants to see what the type of source is. So for instance, if you detect benzene and toluene and the ratio is 2 to 1 or 4 to 1, you know it's probably from some sort of refining or gasoline source. So yeah, with the met data that's being measured and the types of pollutants, it is possible to pinpoint sources.
And I want to just quickly add, it's not just.
Thank you.
The beauty of the BCAMP station is it's not just, we're measuring a whole slew of different chemicals and particulates that impact the health of communities, and it's actually quite simple, frankly, to determine where sources might be, because we're also collecting data continuously. So we have a giant history of data to go through, where if we see an event happening more than one time, or a certain pollutant, and then we can start doing correlations with the wind, it's actually quite easy to figure out where the sources actually are.
Great.
So.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Dr. Moini, yeah. Do you
Yeah.
want to slides?
I'm glad I had an opportunity to show this just as you guys were talking. So, air pollution very often is affected by policy. So an example is the housing policies of 1930s affects air quality today. So the nitrogen dioxide, for example, concentration is heavily affected by redlining policies. So when we talk about, why can't I? Okay. When we talk about air pollution, very often we talk about a couple of concepts. And I actually think a lot of people on this call already know all this. So I'll go through it really quickly, but please stop me if you want me to explain anything. So one of them is particulate matter. So particulate matter is essentially what it's called. It's particles of solid and liquid droplets that are suspended in the air. And they can be made of many, many different types of chemicals. It depends on what the source of pollution is. So PM2 particulate matter near a refinery has a very different composition than a particulate matter near a freeway. Now, if we're stuck between a freeway and a refinery, then you get double whammy. In terms of definition, you very often hear about PM 2.5, PM 10, fine particulate matter or ultrafine particulate matter. This is based on the size. So if you imagine the thickness of the hair, the diameter of the hair is 10 micron, 2.5 micrometers is like a quarter size of that. And 0.1 is what we, less than 0.1 micrometer is what we call ultrafine particles, which are, we're just now kind of starting to learn more about how ultrafine particles actually are affecting our health. And so just a very busy slide, but I won't go into detail. So air pollution actually affects our health even before we're born. So if you have somebody who's pregnant, who's exposed to air pollution, it affects their child in the way that the child may be born prematurely, maybe have low birth weight, or may even, die early on after the birth. And this can be all correlated with air pollution, specifically particulate matter. When we breathe particulate matters, it causes inflammation, it irritates our airways, we cough, we have difficulty breathing, but also it causes chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is just a fancy name of saying people who have chronically difficulty breathing and they cough and they have trouble getting enough oxygen in. Very often, at end stage, they need to be on oxygen supplementation, which is the 4th leading cause of death in the United States. And asthma attacks for children, particularly causes missed school days. And these are, again, children who were born already being exposed to poor air quality, and which can affect also their cognitive function and learning ability. It affects lung function. It can also lead to lung cancer. And actually the physiology of that happens. There was just a paper last year that was published that actually explains how that occurs. Very often you hear people that say, oh, I never smoked, how did I get lung cancer? Actually, there is a specific pathway that air pollution leads to lung cancer in non-smokers, which is the leading cancer killer in the United States. Once we breathe it in, it gets into the bloodstream, and from bloodstream, again, one of the major organs, heart, it causes inflammation in the blood vessels. There was a study that was done at UC Davis that actually Kathy shared it with me, that they had done animal studies and they could actually see and document inflammation in the blood vessels. But just clinically, you can see heart attacks, you can see irregular heartbeats, you can see stroke and premature death. And these are things that actually EPA has done multiple PM 2.5 studies. The last one was updated in 2019, and they do recognize these effects. Two things that, one thing that actually people don't know as much about, and it's not as as well known, is actually how air pollution affects our cognitive function. So first of all, there are many toxic chemicals that are emitted by these sources that are polluting our air. And a lot of these chemicals actually have what we call neurotoxic effect, meaning that they damage the brain cells. But actually one thing that's important to know is that any type of particulate matter suspended in the air can actually, when it's very small, so it's less than 0.1 micrometer in diameter, can actually enter directly into the brain before even passing through the lung. And the way it does that is that there is a little structure up here we call cribriform plate. It actually enters through that pathway directly into our brain. And through the olfactory nerve, it's a nerve that directly goes into the brain. So along the nerves, you have these paths of least resistance, so things can travel along those. Once they enter the brain, they can cause inflammation in the brain. Also, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are known to cause cancer and autism spectrum and other forms of damage to the brain, are very often included in particulate matters. So again, you have children who were already born too early, had low birth weight, and were already not fully developed, that have poor immune function, poor protection, that will not have a full neurological development, and it actually leads also to learning disability. And in older population, you see dementia. You can actually see amyloid deposits in the brain when you're exposed to air pollution, and that's a sign. That's something that physiologically at the cellular level we correlate with Alzheimer's disease and also autism spectrum. So particulate matter is not the only thing that we talk about when we talk about air pollution. We also talk about ozone or smog. So that develops when you have volatile organic compounds and nitrogen dioxide and NOx, variety of oxidative forms of nitrogen. When they're exposed to heat, they form ground level ozone or smog. You're exposed to smog when you breathe and you feel like your lung is on fire. Actually, you feel like you're burning inside, and that's when you're breathing in smog. Nitrogen dioxide is also released in home when we use gas stoves. We just had a very significant rule passed 2 weeks ago through BCAMP that will actually help transition some of the gas appliances in homes into non-polluting electric forms. So we are moving in that sense in the right direction. But one of the things one could do, for example, if you're cooking with a gas stove, is to make sure you have your ventilation on or open windows if it's not a poor air quality day. And we talked about volatile organic compounds just passing. There are many different chemicals that are included in volatile organic compounds. Formaldehyde, benzene, a lot of these chemicals cause cancer. They're released in the process of refining oil. And sometimes it is difficult to monitor these chemicals very often because you have to have very sophisticated air monitoring devices in place, for example, to check for ultrafine particulate matter or some of the VOCs. And there are many other toxic air pollutants that are specific to the emitting source. And I think that's it.
Okay, I want to, you mentioned there one way people can protect themselves, which is probably to get rid of their gas or methane stove. Our gas stoves burn methane. So
same thing.
Natural gas, that was a big PR campaign by the gas industry. But are there other things that we can do to protect ourselves?
So one of the things is to check for, when there's a bad air day because it's fire season or, other reasons, just not being outdoors I mean, assuming that our indoor air quality is good, that we're not having our fireplace, wood burning fireplace on, or are not cooking with gas stove without ventilation. The other thing is that, the N95 masks, there are masks that kind of filter the particulate matters. And I remember during COVID wearing N95 masks in areas, sometimes I would come home and it would be all dark in the face. It's because at the same time that's filtering COVID, it's filtering also all the bad stuff. I actually started, don't share this with everybody, but I started wearing it now when I go to areas that I know the air is not very good. I'm like, I'm going to wear it also outdoors. It's not so good for me. And, when we cook with gas stove, again, ventilation is very important. There are studies that are shown that if you open the windows and you turn your, stove ventilation, you will, it will be a lot better. But again, the best thing, this is very unfortunate in terms of policy, the best thing is prevention. If we can actually prevent these emissions in terms of healthcare costs, we're going to be ahead. It seems like it's expensive to do this, but actually the amount that we save in terms of healthcare costs is very significant. UCLA did a study that showed if you transition home appliances to electric, just within 1 year, we save about $3.5 billion, just annual saving. So the health savings could be dramatic.
Good. Well, this leads me into our next question, which is to Eric Stevenson, who did work for BACMed. And can you tell us a little bit, Dr. Moini was talking about, public participation and regulations. Can you tell us a little bit, or what's your view on what we can do to protect ourselves?
Thanks, Kathy. I think, the doctor hit on one of the main points is knowledge is power, and knowing what is in your air gives you the ability to determine your own exposure. So, on days where there might be high levels of ozone or particulate matter or, additional toxins in the air, which are all measured at the BCAMP monitoring station, you can take action to reduce your exposure for both you and your family, right? So that's one of the main things is that knowledge to help control your environment and to take action is really key. And the residents of Benicia have that, and additional communities can also develop that knowledge if they have similar air monitoring instruments in their community. One of the other things that this data can help do is, the more knowledge that the public has, the more supportive they can be of regulatory actions that either the legislature is considering or that regulatory agencies are proposing. An example of this is Assembly Bill 647, which is going through the California legislature right now, that is trying to make a lot of this data that's created a lot more accessible to the public, so that the public can get downloads of this information and determine their own potential exposures, and also support regulatory actions that legislatures or regulatory agencies are taking. And so that knowledge helps the public, better interact with the regulatory agencies and the legislature, so that they know, hey, the population is informed, the population wants us as regulators or legislators to take action, and that the public supports those actions, and that they understand why these actions are necessary, and that helps push the process along, so that the public is then empowered to force the legislature or those regulatory agencies to be protective of them, and they can support those efforts and advocate for their community's protection. So I think, for me, that's the biggest thing, is that knowledge that data provides is actual power to communities to support the legislation that will better protect them, and to support those activities, that we all know that industry has that power to help drive their interest. So the more that the public has information and knowledge, the more they can protect their interests too.
Right. That's excellent advice. Thank you, Eric. So this next question is for you, Don. With Argos's experience in air monitoring and air monitoring stations, can you comment, what are the gaps that you see in air monitoring and public information?
Well, I think the biggest issue, I guess, associated with gaps and topics of that nature is you really, when you look at data that's made publicly available today, it's very much a buyer beware kind of thing. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will put out information, but whether or not it's really accurate or good or bad is really up to I hate to say it, for the individuals themselves to kind of assess. And this is critically important. Obviously the data put out by the regulatory agencies is going to be the highest quality. We know that. And that's exactly why we patterned the operation of BCAMP to follow the guidelines that the regulators do. That it will give you the highest amount of confidence that the information you're actually seeing and making decisions on your own health is going to be the most accurate. And that's a critical element in this whole thing. And we really need to strive to make sure that any source of data made available, is of the highest quality. And really the critical element in that, if you ever want to know if data is good or bad, the biggest test, the easiest test, how willing is the source of the data willing to put out the raw data and all the information used to collect the information, the data itself. And if they're not willing to do that or put it under some kind of veil of confidentiality or some kind of a black box thing, you should be very concerned about that, because that's kind of leading you to, well, why are they doing that? The regulators, when they put out their data, they're very open as to how they do it, how it's collected, everything there is to know about it. We again strive to do that as well. And if you're looking at other data from other sources, ask yourself that question. That's really kind of to me, the biggest gap in these kind of things, and the thing that everybody from a community perspective should kind of look out for.
Okay.
Don,
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to ask you, Don, right now, can you tell us, we've talked about having to have the raw data available. Can you just quickly explain why that's important?
Well, what raw data allows you to do is you can have other people, other experts, for example, independently validate that information. And that's the highest quality. When we, in the world of science, when we publish papers, the papers that are the highest quality are the ones that are independently peer reviewed. And that means that someone is going to go ahead and check that information, who's independent of the person who's actually creating the data itself. And that's why having the ability to give people raw data to do that independent validation is really the ultimate way to assuring that the public will have confidence in that information.
And is raw data available now from any of the refineries' fence line monitors?
I don't, well, I really can't speak to it. It's, I guess, the critical thing there, Kathy. I don't know if it's required. And so, you know, the data from the refineries, you can get the information two different ways. You can get it from their websites. You can also request the data from the air district itself. It might be a better, you know, someone from the air district would probably be able to answer the question better about the saving of raw data. Or, you know, now with their latest guidelines for the hydrogen sulfide air monitoring system, that is a requirement that raw data be saved and archived. And with that, that's a great start for that. Now, whether or not everybody is in compliance with that, we really can't know, because that rule or that guidance came in on January 1st of this year. And the official reporting period to submit data to the air district is, you know, the end of this month is when reports need to be starting to be sent to the air district. And even then, they have two months to actually present that data to the air district themselves. We'll know at that time if we can actually, if people can get raw data.
Okay. We have a question in the chat that I just sort of want to piggyback on here about whether raw data from BCAMP has been evaluated by third parties. I don't know if it's been evaluated so much by third parties. It is public information, but it is certainly other third parties are doing research on that data. And I want to introduce now Liam Kane, who has been using BCAMP's data to do some research on what some of us are calling toxic soup. And this does show the benefit of having open data. So Liam, I'm going to turn this over, and Don, I think we're going to turn it over to him. He's got a few slides to show.
Yes, yeah. If, I'm just able to share my screen.
Yeah, hold on, Liam. Let me take care of that for you.
Yeah, so while we're waiting, my name is Liam Kane. I'm an undergraduate student at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And in doing my degree program in the interdisciplinary program, studying global sustainability analytics, my senior degree project essentially involved me conducting an exploratory data analysis of the Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program's data. So yeah, I'm just gonna kind of explain what I did and then show off some of the findings that I was able to pull together. All right. This cool, okay. Awesome. All right, can everyone see?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, perfect. All right, so the project essentially explored the BCAMP monitoring data between February 2022 and January 2023. This data was mostly just the concentration readings from the 5-minute monitoring windows collected by the BCAMP monitor. And so this is what an example of a time slice from this monitor would look like as the raw data. Not the raw spectral data, but the data that's coming directly from the monitor. And so we essentially turned these readings into detect or non-detect, depending on the chemical. And for some chemicals, if they didn't reach a certain threshold, we didn't count them, stuff like particulate matter 2.5 and ozone. And so by converting them into a detect or non-detect, we developed something called the toxic soup index, which would tell you how many pollutants are being detected in each 5-minute monitoring window. And so a couple of the findings were that the daily average toxic soup index increased between February 2022 and January of 2023. As you can see, it kind of changes throughout the seasons and between month to month. But overall, as the year progresses, we can see a clear upward trend of the average index value each day. And so we wanted to see kind of the proportion of or the distribution of different index levels across each month. And specifically, we were interested in index levels that were over the average. So these ones, we were looking at 5 mostly because it was just above that index. And as we can see, it fluctuates pretty heavily throughout the year. But between August and January, it really trends upward pretty substantially. And then we also broke down the composition of Benicia's toxic soup to figure out which pollutants are most frequently detected and kind of which pollutants really make up the index on a monthly basis. And as you can see here, the composition of the index really does change from month to month and also across seasons, but it's a lot easier to kind of visualize between each month.
Wow.
And then we also found that looking at the wind, speed, and direction data, that the monitor was downwind of the refinery just about 3% of the year, which indicates that some of the pollution that's being detected by the BCAMP monitor may be coming from other pollution sources. Yeah, for any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. I can also throw my contact information into the chat. Otherwise, if anyone has any questions now, I guess we can see.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, and then I'm going to take some questions from the chat. Did you find that Benicia was exposed to a certain amount of chemicals? What percentage of the time?
So Benicia's exposed to about 4 chemicals at any given time. That's the average. And so that's for every 5-minute monitoring window. So every 5 minutes, there's about 4 different pollutants detected in the air. And we also controlled for those detections, like I mentioned before, of ozone and the particulate matter that didn't reach a certain threshold on the air quality index. So the index values that we have technically should be a little bit higher if you were counting the very low detection concentrations of the particulate matter and ozone.
Okay, does that mean, so for PM 2.5 and ozone, it had to be a certain level before you would measure it?
Yes, yeah, in the
Okay.
index. And that was because particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10, and ozone were always detected along with PM1, but because there's not a lot of the health literature just really isn't there regarding PM1. We just don't really know the real effects of that. So we thought it was important to leave that in for people to see. Okay.
And then we've got a couple more questions, and as long as we're on this, as long as you're here, I'm going to go ahead and ask some of you. Is there a way to have access to this study, and will this study be published by the university? And then finally, does this include data from the fires? Anyway, go ahead. I don't think it would, because most of the fires were prior to the time that the study started.
Right. Yeah. So I'll address the fire question because I'm not a California native. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. But I think Kathy, like you said, I think somebody would have communicated that to me if this incorporated fire season. Can you repeat the other 2 questions? Sorry, Kathy.
Will this be published by the university?
So Dr. Ottinger and I were working on putting together a publication on these findings. But the one thing that we really are focused on this academic quarter, is being able to put put all of these scripts that I've put together, that pull the monitoring data out and convert it into this toxic soup index value, we're going to try and automate that system and maybe store it somewhere like on the BCAMP website, so that these different analyses that I've conducted now can essentially be conducted by the community with very little technical skills needed to continue looking at this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just one further question. When you were monitoring, you weren't necessarily, the levels of all the different chemicals individually were not reaching hazardous amounts or anything. It was just a constant low level, basically, is what you're monitoring.
Yeah, so that was a bit outside the scope of our analysis. We weren't necessarily concerned with the individual concentration data of pollutants like the BTEX compounds, benzene, toluene, xylene, because kind of any concentration of that just isn't good for humans to be exposed to anyways. So I would say no, but that just really wasn't something that we looked at in this analysis.
Okay. As long as I'm talking, I might as well continue. Now it's time for our question and answers, and I am going to take the questions from the chat, and then David will handle people who raise their hands. And the first question I'm going to ask to the Dr. Moyni.
Wait a second, Kathy. Liam, could you stop sharing your screen? There you go. Thanks.
Okay, and there was a question about what chemicals are the most carcinogenic, and how do they affect us? How do they affect the body?
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know the term most carcinogenic. Once something is carcinogenic, it's carcinogenic. So PM 2.5, for example, is recognized by the Cancer Research Organization associated with World Health Organization as carcinogenic as of 2015. EPA has not gone that far, unfortunately, but there are toluene, a lot of benzene. Those are known carcinogens. Like benzene is very well, documented. That's carcinogen. PM 2.5, again, EPA doesn't feel it has the level of kind of comfort to say it is carcinogen. Just keep in mind the bar we're holding to actually prove something a chemical causes harm in this country is quite high. Like you have to really jump through a lot of hoops. It's very difficult to prove carcinogenicity when it's not something that happens immediately. For example, you can link air quality with asthma attack very quickly because it happens right away. You get bad air and people have asthma attack. But cancer happens at least, about 7-10 years later. So it just depends on, again, which standard you go by. I put it in the chat. EPA is revising its standards for PM 2.5, and unfortunately the deadline for giving comments is tomorrow, but if anybody wants to get deadline, I'm giving comments, I'm happy to share talking points and the link how to submit that. So the standard they're looking at is almost twice as high. This is the revised standard, twice as high as what a World Health Organization considers as the rightest standard. So the World Health Organization says it has to be below 5, actually microgram per meter, cubic meters.
If you could share that information with me, just send it to me, and then if anybody wants it, I can forward it. And we have a BCAMP email that people can go to the website and see. I have a couple questions for Eric. And these go way back in the chat. Are the refineries monitors accurate? Because I think you said something about, depending how accurate they are. And do the refineries use the same systems as BCAMP?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you, Kathy. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the refineries have a lot of different types of monitors that are all over the refinery. I'm going to address just the fence line systems first. One of the great things that the Air District recently did with H2S is they put very specific performance parameters together that the refineries are going to have to meet. So the refineries are actually going to have to be very regimented in how they use the instrumentation, how they operate the instrumentation, and they have to basically show the Air District that it meets all of the parameters that they've set down. So for fence line systems, they're beginning to. Now, they also have different types of systems out there that measure BTEX specifically, and the BCAMP monitoring station uses the same technology that the refineries use. And so they're very similar. However, once again, you know, the transparency that BCAMP has in providing that data to everyone and providing that information about quality, the refineries have not, you know, I'm not sure what the Air District is going to require, but at this point, you know, a lot of that information is either limited or not available. So there's the same instrumentation, but different performance parameters that different facilities have to meet. So I know that sounds a little bit complicated, and please let me know if I need to provide clarity for that.
Okay. There are a couple of other questions. One is, does AB 647 capture historical data? And I don't know if you know, if you're the best person to ask about that. And I also have a question about if you could just explain that BACMed is reviewing their fence line requirements now, if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. Right now, the Air District is accepting public comment on air monitoring plans and quality assurance project plans that have been submitted that include H2S. So those plans are available for public review and public comment. And that's opened up for a certain amount of time. I believe they have 30 days to comment on the various plans. So people can look at those plans and you know, make comments to the Air District. For AB 647, I am not sure exactly what the requirements are, but basically it's legislation that's being considered that will make this information a lot more transparent and a lot more available, so that, you know, people can get it much easier. They can you know, download it much more readily. They don't have to go through a process. And so, you know, that helps not only the public, but it also helps get that data out there so that researchers can ingest it and do what Liam did, which is, you know, go through the data and analyze it and provide, you know, analysis to both the public and to researchers.
Great. The next question that was in the chat is about the location of the BCAMP station. And I'm going to ask Don that, since he was around from the beginning.
Sure.
Go ahead, Don, because there's some questions in here about, is it capturing data from the refinery, since it doesn't appear to be directly downwind from it very much?
Yeah, and I guess there's also been a few other questions about the percentage of time that in Liam's presentation. And Liam, we may want to, you know, after this is over, just do a quick check on that. We think it might actually be a much higher percentage than that. But regardless of that, one of the things that's really important about this type of data is to understand that there's multiple pollution sources in Benicia. And just because you're focusing on one major source there's a lot of other different sources that we've identified through the years of looking at this data. And each of them has their own unique signature of pollution. As for why this was located where it is, a lot of that has to do with the fact that when BCAMP kind of came into being, we had a lot of equipment. We didn't really have a good facility to actually use it and operate it. And thanks to Rutzel Woodworks, they donated what is probably the best air monitoring station anybody's ever seen in the whole, with the structure completely built, completely wired up, ready to go. And it also should be understood that the way BCAMP is designed, the monitoring equipment that's located there is actually kind of detachable. So we can move it to different parts of the community based on community interest on various pollution sources. The whole design was done just for that very purpose, to not just have the information in one spot. You know, it's a excellent spot as far as, you know, structure and logistics and things like that. And the other thing that I think everybody should understand is that the Air District, BAAQND, will be installing their own point monitoring station in the middle of the city itself. And kind of the idea was, if they were already going to do that, we wanted to make sure we had another part of the community covered. So in quick summary, really good facility. Everybody needs to thank Rutzel Woodworks for donating that location. They are awesome. Go buy things from them. And it's great artwork right outside the station that they put together. They are awesome that way. The second thing is the equipment is specifically designed that we can demobilize it, detach it from the station itself. And the third thing to keep in mind is, you know, very soon the Air District will be installing a similar type of station, more located in the center of the community itself.
Don,
Again,
I've
just
also
buy
had,
things from Rutzel. They are the best. I mean,
Yeah.
what they gave us was unbelievable.
they're on the call tonight, so.
Yeah.
Don, will people be able to have access to the chat in the recording? We've had a couple of requests.
Yes, so the recording is happening, and what we're doing is, we're recording all the information in the chat as well, and we'll transcribe that, actually.
Okay. David, do you want to take raised hands questions now?
So the chat will show.
Sure, I can do that. So Bart, you've been very patient. You have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this actually is for Eric. Hey, Eric, given we have an issue, you know, we know that there's polluters, we know there's stuff out there. The question is, how does the regulatory agency utilize the BCAMP data to really help, control or put controls on these polluters? And what can we do to further make it, or who do we contact in order to really make sure that we make sure that the regulations are being enforced, and to maybe add new regulations? Can you hear me?
You're muted right now, Eric.
Thanks. That's an excellent question. I'm sorry I was muted there. So at this point right now, the system that's at BCAMP is not a regulatory system. So in other words, the Air District can utilize the data, but they can't take regulatory action on that. And that's just the nature of the beast. The air monitoring station that they'll put in place will be regulatory, so they'll have the ability to use that in some regulatory decisions. The nice thing is, because they know basically how we generate the data, how we control the data for quality, and all those kinds of things, they'll be able to utilize that data to augment it. I think one of the things to remember is that, you know, there are also additional monitoring systems out there along the fence line, at sources, and outside the refinery that are regulatory in nature, and the BCAMP data can augment that information and actually help verify some of the conclusions that the Air District might want to make based on other instrumentation. So it's basically there's an augmentation of everything else there and to provide information to the public at this point. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, except what's the best way for the public to help drive the narrative? For example, if BCAMP comes up and we see there's this, and also these studies show that there's these different pollutants out there, how can the public weigh in to help put pressure on the various polluters? And what's the best route? Is that through the Air District, or is it through the Air District and and the Congress, for example, or the state legislature?
Right. I think I mean, the easy answer is, of course, through all organizations everywhere, right? Writing to your congressman and your state legislators and the Air District itself. But I think one of the things that is really nice about the BCAMP data is that it is here in the Air District. The Air District has regular board meetings, regular committee meetings. They do a lot of rule development and things of that nature. And it's easy to get that information from the Air District just by going on their website and finding out where these meetings are occurring, when they're occurring, and making your observations and your concerns known to not only your local regulators, but to your state legislators and things of that nature, because California is one of the most progressive states, and the Bay Area, of course, is one of the most active regulatory agencies and has enacted a lot of regulations that are first of their kind. So, just getting involved in that process and writing to.
Whoops. Did we lose Eric?
Yeah, it looked like he disappeared. Okay, well, I'm sure Eric will come back, but in the meantime, I don't know, Mary Frances, can you go ahead with your question?
A lot of people don't realize that we have 2 refineries in town. And we have a gas and other oil product refinery, and we have an asphalt refinery. And where the BCAMP equipment is located, can they tell the difference between things which are chemicals which are being spewed by one or the other? Because most of the time we never think about what the asphalt refinery is doing. And it's dirtier than the regular Valero refinery.
So if you'd like me, David, to address that question.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, so thank you.
Okay, yeah, okay. So where it's actually located right now, the most likely answer to that, Mary Frances, is probably not, because I think by the time that what the asphalt, the asphalt plant emissions would end up crossing over the other refiner, the Valero refinery to get to the BCAMP station. Now, an interesting update on asphalt plants, though, there's a couple things, and we have been, you know, we listen a lot about what's going on regulatorily and these kind of things. And it looks as if I can't give you the exact legislation where this is occurring, but it's likely that sources such as asphalt plants and things like that are now going to fall under a whole new similar set of regulatory regime monitoring, much like the larger refineries are. And interestingly enough, we just finished up doing a project down in Irvine, California, at an asphalt plant in a community there, where we came up with a very specific marker for that, the pollution from that facility and when it impacted the community. And what was so interesting about it was whenever the community made complaints to the air district based on odor, the air quality, the air pollution that we were detecting showed up as being 100% correlation from the asphalt plant. So we can actually replicate that. And by the way, that asphalt plant is now closing, of all things. Probably a good part of that was due to the fact we had gotten so good at identifying its emissions. But again, Mary Frances, we've actually, you know, by looking at, as my partner Mark Barrett here said, you know, by looking at the types of pollution we're detecting at any given time, gives us the ability to identify sources. And like I said, in the case of the asphalt plant, it was 100% correlation. So this is something we can actually do for the community in Benicia, because the technology we use to do that is actually at BCAMP.
David, we have one question in the chat here that I think people might be interested in. Before the BCAMP, the BACMET monitor goes in, and it's going in on the east side of town, and I'm going to address this to Eric, who I think is back online now. Where is the closest air district monitor now to Benicia?
Right now, there's a monitoring station in Concord, in Vallejo. There's one in Rodeo, and Fairfield. So I mean that they've got it surrounded, but as anybody who lives in Benicia knows, you know, the wind certainly blows up that strait, and and you know, the weather may be a little bit different, but I think, you know, one of the things that is important to know is there was a time where there was an air monitoring station at Benicia. That's actually where Don and I first met. He helped put that together.
Well,
And
actually,
it was
Eric, quickly, Marilyn
Yeah.
Bardet is the person who put that together. So
yeah, that's true.
Everybody
That's-
needs to clap for Marilyn, because
That's true.
so much the reason this is all happening.
So
And-
Eric, do those stations measure the same things that BCAMP does basically? Do they have a suite of, are they measuring a suite of chemicals?
Each location is measuring slightly different things. For example, the location in Martinez is only monitoring for SO2. The station in Concord and the station in Vallejo are have a lot of different compounds that they measure. They measure ozone, PM, BTEX, and a number of other volatile organic compounds. So the stations themselves may measure different compounds and different from each other compounds. But it does give the Air District a pretty good idea of generally what's in that region. The beauty of BCAMP is that now you know specifically what's going on day to day in Benicia.
And is there one in Martinez?
There is, but it only measures SO2.
Okay.
Okay, are there other questions that we have? You can raise your hand with the reactions button if you want. All right, seeing none, I just want to thank the panelists and for all of you for attending. And I certainly learned a lot, and so I expect some of you probably learned something too. Oh, we have one more question from Maureen. Do we have time for a question from Maureen? I think we do.
Sure.
I thank you for that, because I am currently working on trying to get P66 to accommodate us with raw data through an API format. I'm working with Gwenna Ottinger, and two things. I think that SB 647 is going to be really important because it will require refineries to share their data. And this was my presentation I'm on the fence line committee, and I said I requested this information, and they said, well, we report to BCAMP. I says, well, BCAMP is like in San Pablo and in Concord. That's where and they have some detection stations in South Vallejo. I said, we need to fill the hole. We need to have the data right here that will triangulate between Benicia, et cetera, and South Vallejo and here. So I'm working on this, and but I believe that SB 647 is super important because it will require them to give us the raw data.
Maureen, you need to call me, Dawn.
I know you from the fence line committee,
Yes,
so thank you.
and they are required to give you the raw data because of the good neighbor agreement you have.
We definitely need to talk because
that's part of your land, and that's tied to their land use permit. That is in writing. They must submit that to you.
It's important that we push this forward. So thank you. I will be in touch.
That's the only refinery that I'm aware of where, and it's not through Rule 1215. It's through the good neighbor settlement. And
well,
they
thank you
must
for
give
that.
you
Okay,
data.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Marilyn, do you have a question or comment? You're muted right now.
Sorry. In the chat, we have a lot of great questions and many didn't get answered. But because people appear to be very enthusiastic about this whole process and opportunity, I hope, I'm assuming that we will get your questions answered one way or the other, and that we are trying to improve over time our website, which does post the data right now. You can go to our website and see what data is being posted every 5-minute interval, 24/7. But we have a resources button, and on the side, we will be posting things as we can. Remember, we're all volunteers. And so we will be updating the website, improving it. Meanwhile, things will be posted to YouTube. This forum will be posted to YouTube. And if you have ideas and you want to get involved, come talk to us. Email us, let us know, because actually we can improve things with more people involved. And I'm so impressed. I just have to say, so impressed by Liam's presentation. It just knocks me out that we have a young person at Drexel University in Philadelphia telling us about the toxic soup in our air from all the sources. I mean, I thank you, Liam. You give me hope and courage. And so thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
I'm just going to add to what Marilyn said. If you want to keep up to date with, when we have our next forum, yeah, David Lindsay just put in the chat, our email address is pretty easy to remember, bcamp94510@gmail.com. And you can also just Google us, find our website, and the email address is on that.
Kathy, I had one more comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to tell everybody that BCAMP is a nonprofit organization, and currently we're operating based on the money received through the Good Neighbor Steering Committee settlement. We need donations to keep us going as well, and to improve equipment, etc. So I would plead with everybody to donate. Kathy, our donation sign's on the website, right? It's on the.
Yes.
I think it's
yes.
at the top. Yeah. So I would plead to spread the word. Small donations are great. Just anything you can, because this is too important for us to have it run out of money, because I think it can run out eventually if we don't find more sources eventually. So just putting a plea out there for more donations, more funding.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Bart. Yeah, money is always important for a nonprofit, and yeah. Okay, so I just want to wrap it up here. Again, I just thank the panelists, Dr. Moyni, Don, Eric, and Liam. Thanks so much, and all your smart questions that people asked. And yeah, like Marilyn says, we want to do this some other time, and we look forward to that.
And David, anybody who wants a recording, if obviously they had to get hold of you guys to get the information here, just send us an email and we'll make it available to you, and you can post it on the BCAMP site.
Yeah, I think that's what we wanted to do, is just add it to the website.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, David, do we want to leave Kathy, we want to leave the Zoom, we can end the Zoom recording, but do we want to leave the meeting kind of open for people to hang around afterward and just talk at all, or what's your thought on that?
Well, I'm happy to hang around for a few minutes, but
Yeah,
I don't know about Don and Eric.
The board members are going to hang around for a few minutes, and then we can just kind of do a debrief on our meeting. And if anyone wants to listen into that, that's fine.
Yeah, and I want to thank Don and Eric, and is Dr. Moyni still here? Thank them too.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Yes, I want to say one last thing, is to thank Dr. Moyni, because I originally contacted her and she immediately said yes. And it's really a privilege to meet you right now. Thank you.
That's very nice of you. I always say yes, and then I think, okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Dr. Mooney, are you available for any other podcasts or anything? Are you accessible for those kind of things?
Sure, if my schedule is free, sure.
Great, thank you so much.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. It has been very, very interesting.
Good night,
And
Mary
as a
Frances.
member, as a founding member of the GNSC, the Good Neighbor Steering Committee, this is exactly what we wanted to have happen.
That's right, Mary Frances.
Right. Okay, so we're going to have an extended time as the board of directors, right?
Yeah, maybe if people that are still on, if you want to just
Mute.
like some feedback in terms of how this experience was for you, that would That would be good. Or you can email it to us later if you would like.
I think that would be better to let us know.
Yeah, maybe just let us know by email to one of the board members or to our BCAMP email.
That's fine. So who wants to run this? Dave, do you want to run it?
You want me to?
I was about to ask the same question.
Want me to pause the recording now, David?
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead and pause it.